Welcome to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and today we're going to be talking about the nonprofit No Child Goes Hungry with its founder, Kären Rasmussen. Welcome to the show, Kären.
Glad to be here. Thank you for asking me.
So, full disclosure, as I always do, we serve on the board of Bright Paths together, and we have for about 6 years. So that's really how we connected initially. So I was there even before the beginning of this nonprofit took shape, and I kind of remember a little bit about the evolution, starting with a fellowship program that you became a part of. So help us to understand sort of what the genesis was of your aha moment about starting this nonprofit.
Sure, and everything is a journey, isn't it? You
Yes.
start with one little thing in mind, and then you think it's going to go straight up there, and then there's all this different path and all the crazy things that go with it. I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister, and ministers are often in the parish. You normally see us in churches doing our thing in the pulpit and doing parish ministry. Well, I happen to be a community minister, and that's another different kind of minister that works out in the community. And part of what I was doing and do with you is I'm on the board of Bright Paths with you. And so I'm working on the board with you, and I'm thinking, and I'm sort of cogitating in my head saying, you know, this is just crazy. It is crazy that we have so many children in the world and in the United States, in our own neighborhoods, that go to bed hungry. But we have a bazillion different organizations that are serving all the different hungry kids. And I thought, something's wrong with this, that we need to reframe it. We need to look at it a little bit differently. And so I started to get this idea, and I started to get this passion inside of me that I needed to do something different in order to feed kids in our communities. And so I had this idea and this passion, but no form to it. I just knew there was something that I needed to do that was even more than what I was doing. I've been a hunger activist in Fairfax County for about 8 years, and I thought I'm just not doing enough. And so I started to think, well, what would that look like? What would an organization look like that's reframed, that is somehow different than all the different organizations that are going? And then I had this idea, and I was fermenting on it and thinking, but it didn't have any form. And just as I was thinking about what I was going to do and answering the call to that, my denomination, the Unitarian Universalist Association, created a program called Entrepreneurial Ministry.
Wow.
And so you had to come with an idea to this program, this 2-year fellowship kind of program, where there were all these great classes. And you had to come with an idea, because you don't know a lot of ministers who actually start their own nonprofits.
I can't think of one.
Except
for you.
Except for me. And so 26 of us started this 2-year course together, and you had to come with an idea, with a passion. And this course taught you how to go through the process to make it a reality, how to take a ministry or a call or this idea and make it a reality. So through this 2-year program, it started to get some shape. It started to get some form to it.
And it did. And so I remember the moment at which you said, first of all, I remember when you told us you were in this fellowship program. Mm-hmm. Then I remember the moment when you announced at a board meeting that you had finally settled on an idea.
Yes.
And that you were working toward, and so, just trying to find the right name for it. Mm-hmm. That was a process for you too.
It was, because it's so easy to get lost in lots of different ideas and passions and minutia, but to be able to distill it down to something that you can get your arms around and tangible. So I had all kinds of different names and things like that, and I said I wanted to keep it simple.
Right.
I wanted to keep both my idea for this nonprofit and also the name and the mission of it very simple. And so I came up with No Child Goes Hungry, and through this process, about 16 months ago, I applied and became a 501c3, and I'm also now trademarked and registered.
See, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
That is fantastic. And so part of this too is that No Child Goes Hungry says exactly what it is you do. Mm-hmm. You were mentioning to me before the show started that you actually did a little short 90-second video when you were doing an online crowdsourced fundraiser, and you were surprised, 600 and some views of your little homemade video. But then again, the name of your organization clearly tells people what it is you're about. So they click because they're like, yeah, eradicating child hunger, me too. So that to me was a brilliant sort of conclusion for you to have come to. But let's talk about the fact that some nonprofits do direct services. Bright Paths does direct services. We also work in the realm of food assistance.
Yeah.
But you've done more than that. Again, you started out with one idea about how you would help eradicate child hunger, but then you've ended up branching out to other kinds of coalitions and assistance and collaborations.
You know, when you have a passion and you're all excited about it, and I was the kind of person, I was like jumping up and down and say, we need to get out there, we need to feed kids, we need to do it. And people would say to me, my colleagues especially, well, Kären, that's great, I'd love to do this, but I'm fundraising enough for my church, and I'm tired, and I'm working so hard. And that was a moment for me. I was giving a presentation to a bunch of my colleagues, and I can see David sitting there in the chair, and he was tired, and he said, I just can't do any more fundraising. And then I thought, it's like the light bulb clicked, and I said, I need to do the fundraising. So what I do is simple, and the premise of what I do is simple. I do the fundraising, and I meet groups and organizations, and I give them grants or seed money, and say, let's talk how you can go and feed kids in your community. So I'll give you an example. If Kären Reed had a book club,
right,
and your book club was passionate and wanted to do something to feed kids, but one, you didn't have any seed money to start with, or two, you didn't have any ideas on what to do. And that was another aha moment for me. People get overwhelmed by the thought of childhood hunger. Then their systems start to shut down because of the problem.
It's so enormous.
Huge.
Right. How can we affect change if it's so huge?
Huge. And so I thought, I need to make it simple. So I would come to you in your book club, and I would offer you seed money and a grant, and you would say, well, what do we do? And I say, first of all, what's your local elementary school? What is where you sit in your neighborhood, what is your closest elementary school? And I ask that to folks, and they go, well, it's such and such elementary school. And I say, do they have a program that feeds kids on the weekend? And they go, oh, I don't know. It's a block away, but I don't know. I say, call them up and ask them. And so they do. They call them up, and most times they do have some kind of program. And then I say, ask them how you can help them.
Right.
And then use the seed money to help them. So not only do I provide seed money, I help people in communities connect with their local schools and say, how can we assist you?
And see, and those kind of connections are so important because people do want to help, but because of the enormity of the problem and the fact that they don't know where to start or whether anything that they could possibly do is going to make any difference. You know, it reminds me of the starfish story. You know, the girl on the beach.
That's my tattoo.
Oh, that's so amazing.
I have the story with me if you want.
Yes, please tell people the starfish story because I think that is. I didn't even know
it's
that.
It's Lauren Isley.
See, that is. So tell us the starfish story.
I will tell it to you in brief. I
Okay.
have it here with me. Interesting. So it's written by Lauren Isley, and there's a man who's walking on the beach, and it's a beautiful morning, and he sees somebody down at the end of the beach, and it looks like they're dancing, moving to the music, and he says, "Wow, I have to go see what they're doing." And as the man gets closer and closer, he sees that there are millions of starfish that have washed up right there on the beach. And as he gets closer, he sees this young man picking up a starfish and throwing it out into the water. And the man gets closer and closer and says, hey, what are you doing? And the young man says, I'm saving the starfish. And the man says, you can't possibly save all of these starfish. There's millions of them. It doesn't matter. And the young man picks up one more starfish and throws it out to the water and says, it matters to that one.
Exactly.
And so when I personally feel overwhelmed by the amount of kids that need to be fed, I look at the tattoo that I have and I remind myself that it matters to that one.
It matters to that one. And that's why people need to look at the specific rather than the general. And so when you break it down to starting with your local elementary school, which has students on free and reduced lunches, that is a place you're like, okay, how many kids is that? You know, and how can my book club or my women's club or my Rotary club or my Kiwanis club, how can we help this small group of people that we've identified, you know, in our community? And so I think you're giving people more than just seed money. You're giving them a path and a direction, and you're giving them like call the local elementary school. You know, sometimes
Yeah.
people really need someone to say, try this first step.
Yes.
And then try this second step. And then you're kind of coaching and mentoring them to find their path to do something they want to do, and they just don't know where to begin.
And that was another aha moment for me too, because as first I get the name, and then I sort of figure out that I need to do the fundraising and work that part, and then I started writing the checks for the seed money for people. I mean, the first 4 checks I wrote, I just was so excited, and they were to 4 colleagues, and they all looked at me and said, "Well, what should I do with it?" And then I thought, oh, let me help you brainstorm.
Right.
And people do different things with the checks. I invite them to call their local elementary school, but they might feed a refugee family.
Yes.
One church down in Mount Vernon, the Mount Vernon Unitarian Church, they partnered with their local mosque so they could do some interfaith work together to feed the kids through the mosque, and did it that way.
Yeah, because there are kids in programs everywhere.
Oh yeah.
You know, there's community-based programs besides, you're right, faith-based communities are a great way to connect with an existing community of people. Schools also have an existing community of children. But there are lots of other places that if we really sat down and thought about it, where are the other people we haven't met who don't belong to a faith-based community, whose children aren't old enough to be in school yet? How do we find these existing groups of people that need help from your organization? And I think going forward, this is something that's got to probably be in your plan, either consciously or subconsciously.
Yeah, and how to connect even more people in the community to what's so close to them. I needed to practice what I preached, and I live in Annandale, and I needed to call my local elementary school, and I did, and say, yes, they had a program, and they were already connected with an organization. But now I know the school a block and a half away from me is covered.
Right.
You know, we have, 200 schools in Fairfax County, and several of them still need partnerships.
Yeah, there's 40 Title I schools in Fairfax County.
Is there?
Yeah, because I work with a program called Grand Involve that puts senior retired people into the classrooms of Title I elementary schools. And so these are all, too, speaking of collaborations, that we can all work together. And so when we come back from this break, we're going to talk a little bit more about future plans for No Child Goes Hungry here in Fairfax County. So please join us after this break. We are talking with Kären Rasmussen, who is the founder of No Child Goes Hungry. Find out how you can get involved.
Okay, so we drowned the fire, stirred it, drowned it again, and now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. I already posted it.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
Every time I hear the alarm bell go off in school, I think it's an air raid.
A lot of houses in our neighborhood have been destroyed. I like to close my ears and sing songs whenever the bombs come close.
I'm worried our new neighbors won't like us.
But I know it's all gonna be worth it. I just want my family to be safe. But these are not my words.
These are not my words.
These are not my words.
Your daughter is having trouble learning French. Do you A, hire a tutor?
Bonjour.
B, enforce a French-only rule at home? Or C, watch some foreign films? When it comes to parenting, there are no perfect answers, but that's okay, because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Welcome back to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and today we're talking with Kären Rasmussen, who is the founder and executive director of No Child Goes Hungry. Thank you so much for being here, Kären.
My pleasure.
So we were talking about the collaborative efforts that you have made and the suggestions that you've given to people for how they can get involved in the eradication of child hunger. But some of the groups are not necessarily obvious fits. So I had introduced you to Carrie Galloway, who's the executive director of Friends of Guest House, a 40-year-old program that helps previously incarcerated women to re-enter society. And so they have a residential program, and I actually introduced you for a whole different purpose.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm like, oh, Carrie, talk to Kären because she can tell you about this microloan program. But then tell everyone what happened after that.
And sometimes it's just having the connection and having the light go on in your head and saying, oh, maybe this would work, or maybe there's another way that we can collaborate together. So I was talking with her on the phone, with Carrie, and we're having this great conversation about the microloan program. And I'm thinking, because Friends of Guest House it's a residential program for women post-incarceration.
Right.
And I'm thinking, I'm wondering if a lot of these women have kids. So I asked her, I said, do a lot of your women who are in residence there, as they transition, do they have children? And she said, well, yeah, about 70 to 80% of them have kids. So I'm thinking, well, I wonder when their kids come to visit with their moms, if they have snacks and things that the moms can offer to the kids when they visit. And Carrie said, wow, a lot of times that's not in our budget. So I said, well, I think I can help out here. I would like to offer you a grant to provide some snacks and things for the kids when they come to visit their moms, so their moms can do kind of the mom thing.
Right, that's what moms do.
And give them a juice box or a granola bar. And so the first grant that I sent them, they had a barbecue, a 4th of July barbecue with, and they could invite all the kids and the moms, and they could bring in the staff and everybody. And that worked so well, and it was such a positive event that I had the opportunity to offer them another grant. And they did it again at Christmas time.
Yeah, isn't that great? And so that's how one thing led to something that I didn't anticipate. You didn't anticipate until you talked to Carrie. So there are so many possibilities out there that we don't even know what the collaborations are. Tell me about the high school student that you gave a grant to.
Yeah, this was another great story. She works in she's a student in one of the high schools, and her mom had heard about No Child Goes Hungry. And this 16-year-old, her name is Maddie Harris, and her project was she wanted to build a pantry within her high school. Because we think of elementary school kids not having enough to eat, but a lot of times high school kids doing the high school cool thing don't want to let the teachers know that they don't have enough food. So she wanted to build a pantry within her high school. And she wrote me this beautiful email and said, this is my project, I'm doing it with my teachers, this is my junior year project. Do you have any funds? I need help to get the airtight containers.
Right.
Because if you build a food pantry, you need shelves and you need airtight containers. And so I'm so nimble with my organization, I can look at my checkbook and say, why, yes, I can, Maddie. And I could send her off a check, and she went out and bought all the containers. And now they're up and running.
So, and that's the other thing, is the hidden nature of hunger. There are people who are hungry, and like the high school example is great. High school kids are not going to say they're hungry. A 5-year-old will tell you they're hungry, but a 15-year-old, not so much. And there are places, I can think of where young people go, like the public library, and other places where they hang out because it's free to hang out there and it's safe to hang out there, but you don't necessarily have any resources, Yeah. So I love the fact that people are finding you.
Yes.
People are finding you, and that you are figuring out ways to offer assistance to people that we have not considered as being hungry children.
Can I tell you about the birthday packages, the
Sure.
birthday bags? This is another one I love. I get all choked up about it. There's a group I gave a grant to because they were going to work with their local food pantry to provide food in the summertime. Because we don't think about kids who, during the summer vacations, don't have enough to eat because they're
free
not
or
going
reduced
to
lunches.
school. They're not
no
there.
breakfast, no lunch.
So they were going to partner with their local shelter food pantry in order to feed kids during the summertime. And then they noticed, as they're making the bags of food for the kids, that a lot of the kids had birthdays. But they didn't have anything for their birthday. So they came back and said, is there possible a little bit more money? We want to make birthday bags for the kids, so the kids could have a little birthday cake and maybe a little candle and a little treat of something so they could celebrate. And so not only could they get food in the summertime, this wonderful group that I gave a grant to made birthday bags.
That's amazing.
I know. I
So
would have never
creative.
thought of that.
I would never have thought of it either.
But they did, and I said, tell me what you need. And like I said, I'm kind of a one-woman organization. I'm a 501c3, and I do want to tell folks that 100% of your donations go to No Child Goes Hungry. 100% is tax deductible, and I have 100% accountability with every group I give a grant to.
See, that's amazing. And and the thing I love about it too is that different organizations have different established communities, and so you're not reinventing the wheel, and you're not having to employ staff to deliver direct services. This is actually a brilliant model to say, I'm raising the money and I'm vetting the projects in the organizations, but you're maximizing the power of that dollar.
Yes.
By giving it to someone who already has shown themselves to be efficient at delivering the services or the food bags or the birthday bags exactly to the people who need to get them.
And I love, like, this is a ripple effect for me. I would have never known this in the beginning. I love it when I give a grant and maybe do some coaching and training with folks, a little gathering and confidence building with folks, and just sit back and to watch what they do. And to say, go for it, you just go. And often then they start to fund the projects themselves, and they stay just going. Like little ever-ready bunnies, you know?
And well, you said it, I think, when you talk about the fact that sometimes this is seed money. In other words, you're helping people to think about what it is they want to do, and then you're providing them seed money. And then once they realize that they can do it and do it well, they also attract, success attracts people who want to be part of success.
Yeah.
So when you show that you can do something well or efficiently, or that there's an impact and an outcome, which is what people want to see, then it's not just that you're the only source of their funds anymore. Now they've attracted people who are like, yes, I'm on board with this.
And I have offered some folks a second round of grants because I knew they were doing great work, and they said, no thanks, Kären. We've got this. We've raised our own donations. We've got it. We are moving forward with it. And then they have the partnership with whoever they're working with.
Right.
There's one church, the Akatink Unitarian Universalist Church out in Burke. I gave them seed money for a grant. And they went and they formed a group, a social justice group. They partnered with their elementary school. I went to the packing of the food. The social worker from the elementary school brought her daughter to see what all the youth and the whole packing day was. And that's when I can sit back and say, wow.
And that's a ripple effect too. You're touching
Yes.
people in more ways than just feeding hungry kids. You're raising awareness that we have an issue that needs to be addressed, and the fact that ordinary people give their time, they give their money, and to help their friends and neighbors, some of whom they'll never meet. Right? You're packing food for kids that will never say thank you, that you will never see their faces. You have to just know that somebody had food today who might not otherwise have had a meal.
And it's a confidence builder for people. We talked about it being overwhelming, and it can be. We talk about the starfish and feeding the one. Once people feed 1 or 10 or 15, then they go, wow, I can do this. I am making an impact. And that's kind of the mission of No Child Goes Hungry, is I want people to feel confident to feed one kid and one meal at a time.
Exactly. And I think it's very empowering for people to understand that they can make a difference, that that small gestures are very big for someone else. And so where do you see this going from here? I mean, this is the start of a new year. It's 2018. What things do you see emerging on the horizon?
Well, in the year and a half since I became a 501c3, I've been able to get 37 grants out to different places, which
that's remarkable.
It is remarkable. And the next step for me is to do some larger fundraising. I would like to get involved with some corporations and do some matching gifts, because I work with a great mentor. I have a great business partner and a council of advisors, and I'm ready to grow. I've done a lot of the seed work. I've done a lot of the administration. I do almost all of it myself.
Yeah.
And I am really ready to become a larger organization, just to send more seeds and grants out.
No, I think that's important. I think it's important to look at it because every community is different too. I saw something in the Roanoke paper maybe a week ago where the schools were shut down for several days for snow. And they opened a high school and they opened an elementary school and they served lunch at both places and said any student from any of the schools in the Roanoke area could come to those two schools to get lunch. I mean, that's just something people don't think about.
Oh, no.
How do kids get food on snow days?
Snow days are hunger days for kids. And
Yeah.
how did we get to that? I mean, I could preach that to you, you know?
I know.
How did we get to a place where snow days, which are supposed to be fun, become hunger days for kids? And so that's what I like to do. I like to be sure that kids get fed all the time.
And I think too, you know, the activism around this for the young people, like you said, the social worker brought her daughter to see the packing of the food. I'm hoping that it also inspires young people to look around, like the high school student realizing her classmates were hungry and no one knew it. And so to me, that's also very inspirational what you're doing, allowing people to think about the ways in which they can make a difference. And you're funding it.
Yes, and I'm funding it. And I often surprise people with the grant, and I get great joy out of that. Some folks ask me for it, and some folks it's a complete surprise.
So how would people, if somebody had an idea, how do people reach out to you to say, well, Kären, now that I know that you've got this thing going, this is my idea, how would they reach out to you?
Sure, and I think you're showing it on
The URL, yep.
Yep, through my website, www.nochildgoeshungry.net, or my email, kmrasmussen@nochildgoeshungry.net. And so you can just email me and say, hey, I'm interested in a grant, here's my organization, or here's my thought, or I would like to make a donation, or hey, could we collaborate and brainstorm together?
And are you available, I know you do a lot of different things, but are you available to speak at a Rotary Club, a Kiwanis Club, a Women's Club,
Yes.
to talk about how their club can collaborate with you in either funding, donations, or actually delivery of services through a program any of those organizations can set up?
Yes.
Yes, so you would go and speak to every, there's 30 Rotary Clubs in Northern Virginia, believe me, I know them all. And I think that would be wonderful because I do think service organizations don't understand how they can do a more effective job.
Yeah,
So thank you
I'd
so
love
much.
to.
I thank you so much for being on the show, Kären. I think this is a wonderful program. I'm glad that people have tuned in to learn more about how you can eradicate child hunger, even if that is one child at a time. So please go forth, do some good. This is what you need to know.